Good morning. Mic working? Fantastic. So good morning. Oh, it's pretty good for a Tuesday. First of all, I want to thank Pete for extending the invitation and asking me to speak again. I've kind of lost count how many times I've been here at Frisco Connect and South Lake, and it all kind of runs together. But the good thing is with all the changes that are happening to AI, it's always a little bit different when I come to present. I've always got a little bit something new. A little bit of the origin story of my background and this presentation that you're going to see today. First of all, I think it's important for you to know that I am not some kind of computer programming genius or Python guru. I don't have advanced degrees in artificial intelligence. In fact, I'm probably a lot more like you than I am a developer. And why that's important to know is because everything that I show you today, you're going to be able to leave and do immediately. In fact, I know you're going to feel like you want to take photos of a lot of slides that you see today, but rest assured, at the end of today's presentation, I'm going to give you a link to every prompt that you're going to see here today and a whole lot more, 14 different pages of prompts that are dedicated to your job search. But what I'm also hoping to teach you at the end of the day is not just to think about AI in terms of how to use it for job search and your general productivity, but how is this going to transform what you do in your new role? How can you learn a little something from using AI in your job search that you can take into the future? Today's agenda, 3 parts. We're going to start by taking a quick look at what's going on with the current ChatGPT platform and some of the new features that have come out just in the last couple of weeks and months. The meat and potatoes today, though, is going to be the section on prompting. I'm going to talk about the 6 components that I feel are going to help you improve your prompting and the results that you get from that. We're going to then take a look at how to apply those techniques with some specific prompt examples and ones that are really geared towards job search. We're also going to talk a bit about customization. How can we make the AI tools look, feel, and sound a little bit more like us rather than that basic foundational training that they have? We're going to get into some of the advanced features that have just launched. And for those of you who may have heard me speak before, I always try and have a little something new for you as well. Last but not least, we're going to talk about how AI is evolving, what might be coming next for the industry and maybe also for your learning journey. Your AI learning journey. I started speaking about AI almost 3 years ago, and when I would walk into a room like this and I would say words like ChatGPT or Bard or Midjourney, I'd get a lot of blank stares, and everybody essentially was at level 1. They were the complete novice. But what I'm finding these days is, of course, everyone's heard of these tools now, but most folks are somewhere on the spectrum between level 2, level 3, and level 4. A couple of caveats before we dive in here. The first one is that this technology is evolving and it's changing very quickly. And so you need to know that what you see today, you might get slightly different results when you go home. But more importantly, know that your experience is going to continue to evolve. How the systems work now is going to be very different than how they're working 3 months from now, and definitely 12 months from now, 2 years from now, it's going to be a whole new world. Second caveat, if you are in a job, please check with your company to understand what their AI policy is before you use any of these large language models. Don't want to get you in trouble, don't want to put your company's data in jeopardy. So I used to begin by doing this whole historical exposition on AI and how it started and early chatbots and all of that. But For the sake of time today, we're going to skip over all of that. And what you really need to know is we're going to be talking about a subgroup of a subgroup of a subgroup of AI, and that's a term called generative AI. It's actually been around in the academic world since about 2014, but most of you will know it more broadly from a date at the very end of 2022, November, when a little tool called ChatGPT burst onto the scene. And I always like to begin these presentations by diving into the etymology of the word ChatGPT. There's a few nuggets that are in there. First of all, let's talk about chat. That's actually nothing really new for any of us. We've all been using chatbots for a long time, whether it's to interact with AT&T or a customer service representative. Chat is actually, nothing new to the game. But I would say chat is starting to change because these new systems are not just text-based. They are multimodal. They can take input from voice and images. In fact, I find that probably 50% of the time I'm interacting with voice instead of my keyboard, just because I can give a lot more context when I speak to these things. The real secret sauce, though, is the GPT, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Generative, this is what makes it very different from the old AI. The old AI was very rules-based, 2 + 2 always equaled 4. But having this generative quality where it can generate brand new content has made it really transformational. It can see 500 pictures of a sunset and then create something that is completely new, a completely new image of a sunset that we've never seen before. P stands for pre-trained. These models have been trained on a huge corpus of information. The early ChatGPT was several 100 billion artifacts that it was trained on. The latest models are well over 1 trillion, essentially the depth and the breadth of the public internet. T, the last letter, is for transformer. This is how the model takes all of this input, whether it's voice, whether it's text, whether it's images, and tokenizes that, digitizes it, and sends it to the neural networks for processing, gets the feedback, and then transforms it back into language, pictures, voice that we can understand. So I just like to put this picture up. This is from the early days of ChatGPT. They used to display this message, and much of it is still true. First of all, the models may occasionally generate incorrect information. Why is it doing this? Well, I just said that it's basically been trained on the depth and the breadth of the internet, right? And we all know how perfect the internet is, right? There's no bad information out there. So garbage in, garbage out. That's the warning here. There's another reason, though, is these models fundamentally want to please you. In fact, you may have heard this term sycophantic to be used with platforms like ChatGPT or Claude, et cetera. They really want to give you information. And so in the old days, if they didn't know it, a lot of times they just made it up. And you really had to become a good editor to challenge that. These days it's better. It's not perfect though. Hallucination is when it makes something up. Hallucination rates are less than 1% for most of the models these days. It may also occasionally produce harmful instructions or content. More so in the early days, a little less so nowadays, but you will still read a Newsweek article about how somebody used it for mental health coaching and it went poorly. Last but not least, limited knowledge of the world after its training date. This was a real problem in the early days of ChatGPT. The models were trained on a date that was normally maybe a year in the past. And so if you wanted to try and find information that happened last month or last week, it was a real challenge. Fortunately, this problem has primarily been resolved because almost every platform out there now has web search augmentation. So that has its foundational training, so it still knows from a very finite period of time, but it has the ability to go out and search the internet to find more current information. So which platform to use? A very common question that I get. My recommendation is if you've got a platform that you're working with that you really like, whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's Claude or Gemini, keep using it. Most of what I'm going to be showing you today is going to be applicable across all of the platforms that are out there. Now, I talk about ChatGPT primarily because it is the dominant platform that's out there. If you look not only at web traffic, but if I look at groups like this, and you'll see at the end I have a quick 4-question survey to understand what people are using. 90% of the folks are using ChatGPT. Now, many people are using multiple tools these days. They have lots of different arrows in their quiver. And maybe after you get comfortable using ChatGPT, you might want to experiment with Gemini or Claude and understand how it's different. But I do think it's good to kind of go narrow and deep initially and try and understand what the models are good at, what they're not good at. So how can you get ChatGPT? Well, 3 ways, and I recommend actually all of them because they all have some advantages. The first is you can just go to the web browser version on ChatGPT, and you don't even need to have an account these days to utilize it. If you do have an account, then you're going to be able to create history and look back at all of the things that you've created, but it's not necessary if you're concerned about security. Secondly, a desktop app. So you can now download a program that you can have open in your computer while you're working on it. And it has some additional features that allow you to interact with it. For instance, its ability to work with different apps that are on your computer and the ability to take a screenshot and immediately share that. So if you're working on a problem, you can essentially show ChatGPT what the problem is right on your computer. The last is actually one of my favorite, and that is the mobile version that you can have on your phone. You can download it from the App Store, the Google Store, Chrome Store, etc. Absolutely free. And the reason that I like this is because it has a great voice interface. I like to go out every day and I run about 5 miles. And while I'm running, I like to be able to learn. And this gives me the ability, whether I'm researching a company or trying to understand a new trend, I can actually have a conversation and do a deep dive while I'm on the go, in the car, on the run, whatever it might be. So let's talk about the paid version versus the free version, because this is probably the second most frequent question that I get. Should I pay? And my general advice to folks is, first, start with the free version, whether it's on ChatGPT, whether it's on Anthropic, whether it's on Google, and use it until you start to run into barriers, whether it's a system limit or whether you want some more advanced tools that are out there. These days, the models are actually much closer in their capabilities than they were the last time I spoke here. But let's kind of dive in and talk about a few of these things here. The free version is now using the most advanced model that OpenAI offers. It used to be when I would come here that the paid versions got the latest model and the free version kind of had the stuff that the paid guys had 6 months ago. But starting in August this year, we got a brand new model, GPT-5. It's the first major model upgrade in over 2.5 years for OpenAI, and they gave it to everyone. So even if you're using the free version, you've got the best model out there. Now, there are going to be some system caps that are out there, some limits, and you may run into that where you hit your cap and it's going to kick you into a version called GPT-5 Mini. Very capable, you might not even notice a difference at the end of the day. The training date for this new model is September 2024, so over a year ago is the foundational training, but again, it's got that web search augmentation so it can look for new information on the internet. Apps available on iOS and Android, and also the token limits are almost exactly the same on the paid version versus the free version. So what is a token? A token is essentially the amount of information that you can both put into the model and get back out in a single mouthful. right? They're not exactly words. They're kind of like 3/4 of a word. So if you hear 100,000 tokens, that's like I can give the model 75,000 words at the end of the day. Now, the last time I spoke here, the token limits were only 4,000 for the free version. So you had to be kind of careful how much information you gave it, and you couldn't get really large amounts of content as the output. But now with over 256,000 tokens available, you can essentially give it a couple of books for it to process. Now here's where things start to get a little bit different. File uploads and photos. With the free version, you get 3 a day, and each of those files can be about 25 megabytes. With the paid version, you're gonna get 80 file uploads every 3 hours, and that's part of the reason that I do it. Because when you start to use files and data with these models, it improves the overall accuracy of them. If you ask it to go find a 10K document or an analyst report, yeah, you might get the right information, but if you actually give it the document, the improvement in the integrity of the data is between 14% and 28%. So I like to give it lots of files. The next difference is deep research. Has anyone heard of deep research out there? Okay. Well, I'm going to answer what that is a little bit later and show you how you can utilize it for job search. But it is a very powerful agentic tool to help you do research in different ways. With the free version, you're only going to get 5 deep research reports a month that you can do. So don't screw them up, guys. If you're on the paid version, 25. But I'll show you how to mitigate all of that a little bit later. Let's talk about some of the other features. For the free folks, you get access to the GPT store, which is a little bit like the App Store out there on your iPhone or on your Chrome device. You can go and find GPTs that have been customized to very specific tasks, like public relations, or like auditing, or like job search, or ATS criteria. So those are available for free for everyone. You also now get access to something called projects, and I'm going to show you how to use projects a little bit later today in your job search. And most recently, the last couple of weeks, they have now created a new feature called apps, which allows ChatGPT to connect with outside applications. And so, for instance, if you've got an account with Expedia or with Booking.com, you can now connect those two things together. So those are free in the free account. What's in the Plus account? So you're getting the GPT store, but you can also create your own custom GPTs. And you're gonna see, when I send you the link to my prompts, you're gonna see all of these GPTs that I have created for job search, things that are for salary or finding adjacencies in your job search out there. So you can actually create different tools to do different jobs for you. In addition to that, you get something called tasks, and I'll show you what tasks are a little bit later today. You can set the model up to do a recurring prompt every day, kind of like how you can have LinkedIn do specific job searches for you. You also get the projects feature, you get the apps feature, you also get a record function on your desktop app if you have a Macintosh, which is going to allow you to record online meetings that you're on, or just a brainstorming that you want to have with ChatGPT. And it takes all of that, translates it, and sends it to ChatGPT. Last but not least, ChatGPT agent. You may have heard the word agent. We're going to talk about that at the end today. So this is the current free web interface that most of you on the free accounts are using. Let's talk about some of the new features that have been added that you may or may not have noticed. To begin with, you now have this little eyeglass that allows you, if you click it, to search every prompt, every chat that you've ever created in ChatGPT. So if you're like me and you wrote something 9 months ago and you can't really remember when or where it was, you can now just type in a few words to say, JCPenney's, or what was that company I was looking at, and it will go through all of your chats and instantly find it. You used to not have that in the free version, now you do. Below that is something called library. Some of you folks already know that you can create images in ChatGPT, and if you want to find those, the easiest way now is just to go to the library section, and it's going to show you basically that film strip version of all the pictures you've created. Down here is the project section, which we're going to cover later. A great way for you to organize things in your job search, but there's a lot of other cool stuff that you can do with it. And then what's this thing over here in the upper right-hand side, that little dotted thought bubble? That's actually called the temporary chat. If you click that, what that will do is two things. First of all, it's not going to store your chat in your history at all. It's kind of like going into private mode. It's not going to keep the history. It's also not going to share the information and store it on the system. Normally, ChatGPT will store your data for 30 days, and then they will delete it. In this case, you click this button, it's not going to store anything. So this is a little bit like privacy mode. Now, I like to use it if I'm just doing a real quick internet search thing. It's not a prompt that I want to keep for the future. I will just keep it, turn this on so it doesn't create a lot of clutter for me. So now let's talk about your search bar that's in the middle of the screen. If you click that little plus button, you're going to get these drop-down menus that you see. And there's one aspect that I want to talk about that you may not know about. This little area here called Think Longer. So this tells us that if something has changed with the models in the past year. This actually started to happen in January of 2025. Prior to January, we only had these GPT models that essentially went to their foundational training, got back to us with really quick answers. They were super for creative writing, generating creative content, brainstorming. I like to say they were a lot like William Shakespeare, super good with words, but not so good with logic. For instance, if you asked them, how many R's are in the word strawberry? It would really struggle to answer that question. And so if you gave it a legal exam to pass the bar, something that required lots of words, it could actually do a really great job. But if you gave it the CPA exam, it was flunking, right? So they knew that they needed to change something to improve the accuracy. And in January, we started to get something called reasoning models. Now, these reasoning models will answer a prompt a little bit like you and I would. They first stop and think through, what do I need to do to get to the finish line? What are the tools that I need to use? What is the process that I need to follow? What do I need to go back and double check? And so these reasoning models actually think through step by step using chain of thought process. So it sounds really good, right? These guys are a lot more like Sir Isaac Newton with their logic and their math skills than they are like William Shakespeare. You might say, gosh, I just want to use Sir Isaac Newton the entire time. Why don't I use him 100%? Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, the models are probably going to give you a daily system limits for utilizing these tools. They are slower. So if you turn on a thinking model, instead of giving you an answer in 9 seconds, it might be 30 seconds, or it might be 2 minutes, or even longer, which maybe doesn't sound bad, but if you're writing 30 prompts a day, and each one is taking 5, 10 times longer, that starts to add up. One of the big reasons, though, is environmentally. These, because they are using high compute power, are using large amounts of energy to be able to generate these responses. So I don't know whether you knew this, but a typical ChatGPT prompt, the old version, one prompt was equal to using an LED light bulb for about 20 minutes. So now when you start thinking about these new reasoning models that could take 10 times as long to think about a problem, that's a lot more energy usage. The last is a question mark. There was a big theory that these new reasoning models were not quite as good with the language part and that they might not generate text as fluently as the old models did. I think that question is sort of still out there, especially since GPT-5 has been introduced. Do other platforms have reasoning models? Absolutely. All of them. Gemini, Copilot, Claude, they all have them, but it might not be the default selection for that model. You might need to go in and select a reasoning model. So now the meat and potatoes, prompting. I always begin by asking folks to close their eyes and imagine that ChatGPT was like a brand new intern coming into their company, an intern that had an Ivy League education, that was really eager to please them and anxious to get going, had a great personality, but lacks understanding of your business, your brand, how you like to do things. And just like with an intern, you need to provide guardrails, you need to provide guidance. And that applies for these models as well. You need to give it the right guardrails to get the right results out. I wouldn't take a day one intern and put them in a closet, give them a project that I wanted to present to the CMO, and expect them to do something perfectly 3 months later. And you shouldn't expect the same thing with your job search tasks and your resumes and your cover letters. So you got to guide that intern in the right way. Let's talk about 6 components that are going to get you closer to that goal. The first is task, followed by context, exemplar, persona, format, and tone. Now, these are somewhat in order of importance, but we're going to go through each one and we're going to talk about how they affect and impact your outputs. So to begin with, task. This is the most important part of the prompt. This is telling the model exactly what it needs to do. You can easily identify them because they tend to start with these action verbs, things like analyze, summarize, synthesize, distill, etc. If you don't have a clear task to begin with, the model might not know intuitively what it needs to do for you. So let's start with this as a basic foundational building block, and we'll keep it really simple. We're going to just ask the model to research 3 cookie recipes. So if this is the only information that I give the model, what's it going to do? It's going to take 3 cookie recipes and it's going to go out to these trillions of artifacts that it's been trained on, and it could come back with anything. It could come back with chocolate chip cookie, pumpkin cheesecake snickerdoodles, or some strange Japanese cookie that you just saw on YouTube, right? So what we need to do is provide it with those guardrails, and that's where context comes in. This is really the second most important part of the prompt, arguably the first. It really helps to constrain all those endless possibilities. It used to be really kind of tricky to figure out how much to give it, especially when the token windows were really small and you had to worry about, gosh, is the model going to be able to handle all the information I give it? But these days you can almost give it as much information as you want. The way I ask myself, have I given it good context, is answering these questions. Does it know the user's background? Does it know the background that I have? Does it know what success looks like for me? And does it understand the environment that it's operating in? If I've answered those questions generally, then I've given it good context. So now let's add that context in. I have a gluten allergy and I'm seeking a dessert that I can eat. That's very different context, right? Now all of a sudden the constraints kick in, the model starts to understand what its task is, how far it needs to go. and it's going to start pulling those gluten-free recipes for us. Next is exemplar. Exemplar is just a fancy word for examples. AI models tend to work a lot better if you give them a reference point to say, it looks like this. You don't always need to have an exemplar in there, but you know what? If you're thinking of one as you're creating your prompt, I generally tell folks to go ahead and put that in. So now let's look in gray here. I've added this in. Please include recipes by celebrity chefs, for example, Martha Stewart and Rachel Ray. So now what the model knows to do is to go out and, yes, it will probably look for Martha Stewart recipes and Rachel Ray recipes, but it will also look for people that are like that. And that, again, helps to narrow the constraint. Persona. A lot of folks forget this one. This is essentially the subject matter expertise that we would like the model to assume. Kind of like the glasses that we would like it to look through as it looks at our problem. We can ask it to pretend to be any function out there that you can think of, a managing director at a large bank, or an entry-level social media specialist, or a specific person that might be well known on the internet, like Steve Jobs. So now let's add the persona in here in blue. I want you to act as a nutritionist, advising me on healthy eating and macronutritional information. Imagine how that starts to change the output of what you're going to get back. It's going to look through the eyes of a nutritionist at these recipes to find the ones that are most nutritious for you. Format. Another thing people forget about, they just take what ChatGPT gives them, which is generally going to be paragraphs and it's going to be bullet points. But it can output so many different things, from citation formats to hyperlinks to checklists to code to mathematical formulations to file formats that you might need. You can ask for an Excel chart. You can ask for a PDF. In fact, if you have a question, just ask it if it can create this kind of file. 90% of the time, it's going to be able to do that. So think about, what do I want my output to look like? What format does it need to be in? Tone, also often forgotten. Tone is the voice that we want it to speak back to us with. Imagine you're writing a cover letter and you say to write it in a serious and empathetic tone versus a humorous and informal tone. Two very different cover letters that you're going to get back. And if you don't put tone in, then it's just going to default to the base level of what the model thinks is correctly. So this is a way for you to add some control into how the voice sounds. And we're going to get into how to customize that a little bit later. So some tips for writing strong prompts. First of all, start with the end in mind. What does success look like for you at the end of the day? And then back into that and figure out, what am I going to need to give the model? What information, what context, what examples, etc., to get it to the finish line. Use very simple language. You do not have to speak Shakespearean English. There's no code. It's all natural language. Keep it simple, but be specific. The more specific you are, the less the model has to fill in the blanks on its own. Use examples we've already talked about, and also avoid leading questions. These models, as I said earlier, they want to please you. And so if you have an ideological slant on something, they are very willing to follow you down that rabbit hole and look at the kind of language that you want and take you in that direction. So in general, you want to try and keep it a little bit more neutral. If your prompts are not coming back the way you want, think about things like, do I need to give it some industry information or maybe attach some data to help it out? Have I been clear on my topic or theme? Have I given it a constraint? Maybe you write a prompt and it comes back with a phone book, but really what you wanted was 3 sentences. You might need to add a constraint in there to say 3 sentences or 250 words. Does it have the right structure, the format that we talked about earlier? Does it need any original text or editing instructions? If you're unsure what to do, you can also do this little cheat. You can just add in to your prompt, hey model, if you need further instructions, ask me 3 to 5 clarifying questions. And the model will figure out, okay, I don't know this, this, and this. I need to ask Rusty for this information. And then you can provide the information to the model. Final steps. This is something new. I haven't talked about this. So for people that have heard me speak before, this is one of my big ahas this year. When you're writing a prompt and you think you're creating something that you're going to use maybe for the future, you want to really try and optimize that. One of the ways to do that is after you get your results, challenge the model. Ask it things like, what assumptions did you make when you were answering this question? And you can see, do the model's assumptions align with the assumptions that I had in my own mind? Sometimes you're going to discover some really interesting things. You can also ask it, what might be missing in my prompt? What haven't I thought about when I'm writing this prompt? And the model's going to come back with suggestions. You can take it further to say, critique the output or critique the prompt. And the model will provide suggestions of how to make that prompt a little bit stronger next time. And so you can try those different things and optimize your prompt, get it to a point where it's really giving you the answers that you want. Don't assume that the very first answer that you get is going to be the best one. So when you create a prompt, what happens? Well, the first thing is all of your chat history moves to that left side there. And you can see it, which is great, because then you can go back through it. You can check and find a prompt that you maybe used in the past so you don't have to recreate the wheel each time. However, some folks are concerned about clutter or they're concerned about security. You have the ability to archive all of your old information. If you want to get it out of there, you can delete it as well. That's all in your settings and data control tab. Another thing is when those prompts move over to the left-hand side, you can do a few things with them. So if you click those 3 dots there, you're going to see a drop-down menu, and it's going to give you the option to share your prompt. So I could send my prompt to Pete or Foster and ask them to take a look at the information that came back. I could rename it. If ChatGPT chose a name that is going to be hard for me to remember, I can change that to a nomenclature that maybe is a bit easier for me. Or I can delete an individual prompt. If I don't like it, if it's clutter, just go in and delete it. So Rusty, thank you for 5-6 tips on prompting, whatever. How's this going to help me professionally? How's this going to help me with my job search? So thought starters. Whether you are in a job or whether you're in job search, a lot of us are doing research. And ChatGPT can be a great catalyst, great accelerant in your research activities. So you may not be able to read everything on here, but let's talk about this prompt. Act as a corporate researcher or research analyst. That's persona. Producing an up-to-date brief on the company. That is my task. This briefing is for a senior-level marketing executive preparing for interviews with Mary Kay. The goal is to understand the company's business model, leadership, values, structure, and the market position as of October 2025. That's context, right? What does success look like? What is the environment that I'm in? Now the model has its context. Provide a bullet point company brief organized by section, including things like overview, leadership, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm giving it the exemplar of all the things that I want. Your output should include clean, polished bullet points and a brief explanatory context. This is our format. Last but not least, the tone should be professional, neutral, and evidence-based, suitable for executive briefing. Right, that is giving us the tone that we want at the end of the day. Those of you who've seen me speak before, this is an example of a prompt that I've optimized. I used to have a little bit different prompt, but I discovered by challenging that old prompt, I was actually able to improve the outputs on it. So let's take a look at what this looks like. I chose Mary Kay because Mary Kay was a company that I worked for 8 years. I knew them well. I knew I could validate the data. But it's giving me all of that information in bullet point, everything that I've asked for. It's citing all of the sources that are out there, right? How about if I wanted to track a public company's historic growth and profit, and maybe along the way get it to do some actual calculations for me as well? So in this prompt, I'm asking it to act as a senior financial analyst preparing a brief for executives comparing the performance of 3 different companies. I'm going to ask it to review each company's annual report, extract audited net sales or revenue figures, convert all of those sales to US dollars, calculate year-over-year revenue growth for each company, and present the findings. And so you see I've highlighted those tasks in yellow. I've actually given it 5 different tasks to do within one prompt. So you don't need just to have one task, but what you do need to do is think about what is the chain of thought that I need it to do? What are the tasks in the order that I want it to do? I'm asking it to do calculations in here as well. So it's going to convert things into US dollars. It's also going to calculate year-on-year growth for me. So here's the output. I know too tiny to see on the screen, but what you can see big picture is that it's in tabular form. It looks like an Excel chart. And indeed, what you can do is export this as an Excel sheet and manipulate the data that way. So if you need to find data, if you need to find information, there's a couple things to be thinking about when you're working with numbers. First of all, think about using one of those thinking models. Accuracy is important, right? When you're researching numbers out there. So you want the model that is going to think through step by step, evaluate the sources where it's getting things from. If it's not telling you what the sources are, make sure you ask ChatGPT, what are your sources? And if it comes back and says, this is in my foundational training, or I don't have specific sources that I can share with you, that's a red flag right there, right? I wouldn't use numbers that didn't have a source. If it does come back and say, hey, I pulled this from the 10K documents or the latest annual report, and it gives you a link, you're probably in much better shape. Now, one thing I talked about ChatGPT hallucinating, or any of these models hallucinating. If they hallucinate, they're probably not going to give you the same numbers 2 times in a row. And so one of the things you can do is just hit the little regenerate or ask it to regenerate its response and compare the 2 responses that you get. If it's guessing, the numbers will be different. If it's pulling it from a good source, the numbers are probably going to be the same. Now, I talked earlier about how I like to use documents because they improve the accuracy. And so if you're able to actually find that annual report or that 10K or analyst document and give it to ChatGPT as an attachment, you're going to improve the likelihood of the accuracy between 14 times and 28 times. So if you're really working with numbers, I would suggest attaching data if you can. One thing these models can also do is help you to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats with the companies that you may be interviewing with. So in this, first of all, just looking at the colors, you only see 3 colors. So in this case, I didn't have to use all 6 of the prompting components. In blue, I've got the persona, corporate strategy analysts. Then I've got my task in yellow. I'm asking it to use credible and recent information in the last 24 months to create a SWOT for JCPenney's. Everyone is probably familiar, JCPenney's is here in the Dallas area. Present the results in a classic 2x2 table layout with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so now, here's the output that I'm going to get. ChatGPT gives it to me in that classic 2x2 box format. But I'd suggest taking this further, right? When you start to get the information back, dig deeper. So your job as a job seeker is to provide solutions to the problems that your future employer is going to have. And so if you see something like a weakness up there, that's an indication you might want to dig deeper with your next prompt. So in that prompt chain, you get your information, and now you're going to go back and say, verify this and dig a little deeper. So for instance, in the case of JCPenney's, they're talking about foot traffic and sales being below pre-bankruptcy levels. You're going to want to ask it what its source was and go in and dig a little bit deeper to understand maybe what are the numbers behind that. Think about how can I provide a solution to those problems that I can use when I go into an interview. Now, I'm sure if you're like me, you may be in a few online networking meetings during your job search. I have 2 that I go to every week, and in those meetings, people are on screen, but they're also in the chat, and they're dropping in all of their details, their LinkedIn profile, their email address, phone numbers, contact details, etc. What I used to do was copy the chat, and then afterwards manually translate all of the information into an Excel tracking chart, and you don't need to do that anymore, folks. So ChatGPT can extract all that information for you. Here's the prompt. Please extract the following from the attached Zoom meeting chat. Name, industry, LinkedIn profile address, whatever the core content is, and it will be able to search that chat, give you that output in tabular form, and then you can just cut and paste that into your Excel document. So something that used to take me probably 15 or 20 minutes after each one of my meetings now takes 15 or 20 seconds. So, question for you. The average recruiter looks at a resume for how many seconds? 6. Good answer, consistent. So 6 seconds. What would your guess be in terms of how long that they look at a LinkedIn profile? Probably something similar to 6 seconds, right? So then my next question is if you look on the left side of the screen and the right side of the screen, which one's easier to read in 6 seconds? Right side. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So ChatGPT can help you with reformatting. We heard earlier about this gentleman, Terry Sullivan, who's going to be speaking, remind me? 13th. So if you don't know who Terry Sullivan is, he is the LinkedIn guru. He will tell you how to make improvements to your profile. So this next section I actually call my Terry Sullivan prompt because Terry talks a lot about your about section and how to structure that. And so in this prompt, imagine you're a LinkedIn expert with over 20 years of experience, like Terry, helping to craft the about section. I'm going to give you my resume. So my resume is going to be the context that I want you to pull from, right? And I want you to create the 3 distinct sections that Terry talks about, no more than 2,600 characters, because that's your character limit on your about section, I believe. I'm not sure if that's changed. But 2,600 characters. The first paragraph is going to be who I am, what I do, how I help. Second section includes 3 to 5 bullet points about my key accomplishments in order of importance. And the last section is going to be my call to action. At the bottom, you see that purple section with tone. Terry talks about this as well. Make my about section warm and friendly and write it in the first person to create a personal connection with the reader. So when I do that, I apply this to that big block of text that we saw earlier. It's giving me these sections for me, the who I am, what I do, how I help. My scannable accomplishments, you see it's got little icons next to it, so it's really easy to see, kind of 1, 2, 3. And it can use different kind of icons and graphics that are in there. And last but not least, my call to action, what I'm looking for the person to do next. Analyzing emerging industry trends. So some job seekers out there may be looking to go into a completely new industry. Or maybe you are trying to go back to an industry that you worked in 8 years ago, but you're not really sure what the latest trends are. This is another area where ChatGPT is going to be able to help you out with the analysis. So in this prompt, you're a SaaS industry consultant providing executive level insight. That could be any industry. It could be clean energy. It could be medical technology. You choose the industry and tell it what expert it is. In yellow, here's the interesting thing. I'm telling it what sources that I want it to go to. So one of the takeaways from this slide is that you can choose to direct the model to the sources that you want it to look at. I want you to pull from, in this case, it's consulting firms, government databases, trade associations that are out there, or reputable media. So you can ask it just to go look here, and you can also ask it where you don't want it to look. That is called negative prompting. Negative prompting is where you tell it, do not do this. So for instance, in this case, you could say, do not pull information from Reddit or social media, or whatever content you feel is Wikipedia that you don't want it to look at. So it's going to pull the trend information for you, and it's giving me 3 different trends that are on here. Just notice the 3 bullet points that are on here. So here's what you're going to do next. Once you get these trends, verify them, look at the sources. In the case of the first one, it's coming out of the Gartner Group. Then you're going to dig a little bit deeper. So pick a trend or pick 2 trends and ask it to expand on point number 1 and highlight specific examples of this trend, including the names of companies or organizations that are leading that trend and the examples of the products or services that they've provided. So now you can walk into a conversation with a business leader in that industry you're trying to go into, and you understand the macro trends that could be influencing it. You understand who the key competitors are and what are the products that they are creating. You can even regionalize this if you just wanted to look at a specific area. If you wanted to understand clean energy in the state of Texas and what's going on, you can put that scope into it as well. But start at that high level and then drill down, drill down, drill down so you have the information. So this brings us to deep research. I talked about this when I was talking about all those new features that are out there. Deep research is essentially an agentic research tool that you now have access to, even if you're a free user. It's going to autonomously perform multiple steps of research on the internet, give you a comprehensive report complete with citations. It is fantastic for company research, if you're trying to research a brand new company, or trends. What are the challenges? You get 5 searches a month. And so what you want to make sure is that your prompt is good the first time that you write it, because if you screw it up, instead of 5 prompts, now you're down to 4 prompts. So how do you do it? So what I do is I get ChatGPT to write the prompt for me for my deep research. So ChatGPT, or whatever large language model, I want your help creating a deep research prompt. I'm interviewing with company X, and I give them the website, and I need to orient myself to the company's history, their business model, their products, their key competitors, and anything else that would help me thoroughly prepare for the interview. That's the context. That's what success looks like. Create a detailed, deep research prompt to help me achieve this. So now I'm going to show you the prompt that ChatGPT wrote for me. So look at that. That's not the answer. That's the actual prompt that it wrote for me based on all this information. And let's see if this is, I think I have this as a video. So you can see how long this prompt actually is. It's got 13 different components that I wanted to find in the research. What did it come back with? A 27-page report. I got from this. It took it 2 hours and 15 minutes to do it. It did 117 citations. Now, I know 2 hours sounds like a long time, but if you had to do research or you had to have an analyst go out and do a research project for you with 117 different citations, and they're all going to be in there. I've got a fast fact snapshot that gives me the executive summary, company history and milestones, business model canvas, product and technology portfolio, regulatory and clinical evidence, market consumer insights, competitive landscape, go-to-market, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Extremely thorough. So imagine now utilizing something like this for your company research on somebody that you're interviewing with and targeting, or on trends. Next thing we're going to talk about is how to utilize it in your job search with your resume and with job descriptions. And in this case, we're going to get it to compare two different data sets. The first data set is your resume. The second data set is the job description. Now, we're using these as an example, but in the business world, you can get it to compare other documents. They could be policy documents that have just come from the US government that you wanted to compare two different policies to understand changes or similarities, et cetera. But it can do that for you. So I want you to act as a corporate talent recruiter. I'm going to give you a resume and a job description, and I want you to compare the two, identify any synergies and gaps that should be explored in an interview. Here's what ChatGPT came back with. So on the left-hand side, we've got the synergies. Yay, I know what I'm good at, where there's good alignment. Very importantly, here are the gaps over here. Here are the things that I need to be prepared for going into an interview or that aren't being properly reflected on my resume. So I did a little experiment. I took a resume that wasn't a really good fit and I dropped it into this tool called JobScan. Have you all heard about JobScan? For those of you who don't know JobScan, it's a website, it's a piece of software where you can put your resume in, you can put a job description in. It's going to give a rating of how closely those jobs are aligned and how likely it is to get past the ATS systems out there. So when I put this resume and job description in, I got a score of 39. So guess what? I'm not getting a phone call on this one. So I wanted to see how could I improve this. So step 2 now is doing some fine tuning. And my next prompt, after I had it do that analysis of the gaps, the next thing I ask it to do is say, based on that job description, please identify the top 8 key headline words that I should include in my customized resume and put them in order of importance. So a few minutes ago, we talked about 6 seconds to scan a resume, right? So maybe they're reading your executive summary and they're looking to see if those keywords at the top are starting to align, and then they're gonna go down the side of your resume and look at the chrono stuff that's in there. So you want those keywords to be aligned, and ChatGPT can look through the resume and figure out what those keywords are and put them in order of importance. Next, after I just did that one little step, we went from the 39% up to a 51% in JobScan. Then I said, based on the job description, please suggest any key experiences and achievements from my resume that I should highlight when I customize. So I don't know about you, but for each job, I've got 4 or 5 bullet points, but sometimes maybe I should be pulling bullet point number 4 up to bullet point number 1 because it's more important for the job. Again, ChatGPT can surface those things for you. And when I did that, I went from a 51 up to a 60. Step 3 was crafting that executive summary. Now I've said, based on what you know in the job description, my strengths and any gaps, how should I customize my professional summary in less than 60 words? Because you need to put that constraint in there, otherwise it's going to give you a phone book. So less than 60 words, how do I do that? And when I did that, I jumped up to a 62 on that score. One thing that you can also do here is if you've got experience that is on the second page of your resume and you want to make sure that it gets pulled into that executive summary, you can tell ChatGPT to do that. If you worked for a blue chip company and you want to make sure that those people that are reading actually see that blue chip company up front and center, you can tell it to pull that into your executive summary. At the end of the day, doing the tweaking in this way, I was able to move that 39 score up to a 73% match. And this was on a job that wasn't really a good match to begin with, but I just wanted to see if ChatGPT could help me get it over the finish line. Now, we talked about comparing two documents. What if we compare two documents and then ask it to create a third document for us? And in this case, we're gonna ask it to look at that job description, look at that resume, and now write a cover letter based on that. So I'm not gonna read this whole thing to you. It's going to be in the prompt guide that I give you at the end of the day. In the bottom area, you're gonna see the tone that I've chosen here. Maintain a tone that is executive level, concise, confident, and human. Avoid cliches, because sometimes ChatGPT can make cliches. Avoid any filler or just avoid restating my resume. Use a standard US business letter format with the placeholders. And so the output that I got from this cover letter prompt looks something like this. And you don't have to read all of it, but you might say, gosh, I would normally write either more or less than that. So one of the things you can do is quickly change the length just by asking ChatGPT. Increase the length by 10%, 20%, and ChatGPT will help to expand it and fill in those gaps. Or if it's shortening it, it will keep the most important context for you. Maybe you don't like the tone. You can ask it to change that tone as well. I said maintain a professional, credible, whatever my language was in there. But if you want it to be warmer or more approachable, you can ask it to change its tone to do that. Now, you always, always, always want to review. And there's a couple reasons you want to review. You want to check for accuracy. You've asked it to pull from document 1 and document 2. Do you know what information it's going to pull from each one? Let me give you an example of what it's done for me sometimes. Maybe the job description has said that it requires 10 years of experience, but Rusty actually has 20 years of experience in that area. And what ChatGPT will sometimes do is default to the 10 years of experience because that's what the job description said. So instead of saying Rusty's got 20 years of experience, it says Rusty's got 10 years. So you want to check for those kind of errors and accuracy, and you want to personalize it. You want to make sure at the end of the day that this sounds like you. And that might just be adding in a few sentences or tweaking it. Now, in the early days of ChatGPT, we'd get the output, we copy and paste it, we go over to Microsoft Word, we put it in Microsoft Word, we do our editing in there. If we made any changes, we had to go back to ChatGPT. You don't have to do that anymore. ChatGPT has a writing tool that is built in called Canvas. And let me show you how to use Canvas now. So in your search bar, you click that little plus button in the middle, and one of the drop-down buttons is this little one that says write or code. It's got a little pencil next to it. And if you click that, it's going to go into the canvas mode. And so now your chat history is going to move over to the left-hand side of the screen down there at the bottom. That's where your chat is now. And now you've got this canvas that you can write directly into. So you don't have to cut and paste it and take it into Word anymore. You could go into a paragraph and add things, change spelling, cut sentences out of it, write just like you were in a Microsoft Word document. But it's got some tools as well. And so down at the bottom on the right-hand side, there's this little pencil. And we're going to click it, and you see that little menu that's got sliders where we can adjust the length, reading level, add final polish, or even put some emojis in. So now let's just take a paragraph and go and ask it to shorten that. That one looks like it's a little too chunky. So I get a slider and I just move it down, shorter, shortest version, click it. And now what we should see is it's going to highlight that information and it's going to condense it into something that's maybe a little bit more digestible. Let's see if it does it. Yep, it's about half the length of what it used to be. I could also go in and adjust the entire reading level. Let's say it sounds too basic. It sounds like something that a middle schooler would write. I could go in and change that entire document to be at more of a graduate level in terms of the vocabulary, the sentence structure, etc. And so you can do all of this. You can proof, you can check for grammar, all of that inside Canvas. So I talked about making sure that it sounds a little bit like you. And one of the fears that a lot of folks had and became a big topic was, gosh, if everybody is writing with AI, isn't everything going to sound the same? And indeed, you can go on LinkedIn these days and look at a lot of posts that all sound the same. People are just using that default setting that the language model has built into it. And so you get this certain structure of how ChatGPT puts things together. But I want to show you that you have control over voice, tone, and style. And we're going to do that with a very specific example. I've got a small one-sentence fragment from a poem by Robert Frost. It's from the poem The Road Not Traveled, or Road Not Taken. Forgive me, it's all tiny here. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So a single sentence in a poetic format by Robert Frost. Now let's ask ChatGPT to reinterpret that in the voice, tone, and style of motivational speaker Anthony Robbins, right? You guys know who Tony Robbins is. He has a very specific way of speaking. So let's see how Tony would say this. At some point in your life, you're going to hit a crossroad, two paths, one familiar, easy, comfortable. The other, it's uncertain, it's challenging, but that's where growth happens. And I made the decision. I took that road less traveled, and that, my friends, is what creates transformation. That's what changes everything. So you can see that the language that he uses, the voice, the tone, the style, is very much like what Tony Robbins would do. But the essence, what he's saying about choosing that riskier path to go down, that stays the same. The core idea stays the same, but the language is different. It's not one sentence like Robert Frost was. It's probably 5, 6, 7 sentences in there. So let's take this example a little bit further. Let's look at another literary giant, Kim Kardashian. All right, how would Kim Kardashian do this? Oh my God, you guys, listen to this. So I was literally standing there and there were these two roads, right? And one was obvious choice, super basic, but the other totally different, kind of unexpected. And I took the one that nobody else was taking. And honestly, iconic, life-changing. I don't even know how many sentences that was, but or if there were sentences, but anyway, we love you, Kim. But here's my point. The essence stayed the same. The voice changed, the tone changed, the style changed, but the essence stayed the same. All right, last but not least, we're in Texas. We got to get this guy out there. All right. Let me share a little story with you all. So I'm not going to read it all, but if you were to read it all, you could picture Matthew McConaughey sitting in his Lincoln Navigator, probably after he just smoked something. But again, my point is 4 completely different ways of interpreting it, but the meaning stays the same. So you can get ChatGPT to analyze your style too, not just Matthew McConaughey or Kim Kardashian, but it needs information from you, right? And so in this case, ChatGPT, I want you to learn my writing style from the following content. And here you're going to give it ideally, multiple examples of a specific type of content that you wanted to write. Maybe it's cover letters, Maybe you give it 3, 4, 5 cover letters that you've written in the past. Maybe if it's for writing emails, you give it some emails that you've done in the past. And what it's going to do is it's going to create an analysis. And I know you can't all read all of this, but I gave it a sample of my writing, and it says, your writing style is professional yet engaging and informative. You utilize a variety of sentence structures to convey complex information in an easy-to-understand way. Your writing is also highly organized with clear section headings, topics, blah, blah, blah. So it gives me sort of a technical analysis of my writing, which I can then take and use immediately, right? After it does this analysis, I could say, now write my cover letter for Mary Kay. But I don't want to have to do that each time. I don't want to go through all of this. So I've got a couple solutions for you. First of all, there's something called custom instructions in ChatGPT, which is telling the model how you want it to do certain things. And so the way that you access custom instructions is down here in your settings. There you go. Down here in your settings, if you click that, your personalization settings are going to come up. And you're going to see a little box like this. And within that box, an area called custom instructions. And this is where you could do things like take that style analysis of your writing, and you could put it in and say, when I'm writing, please utilize this style in here. Or if you're seeing it doing other kinds of behaviors, like ChatGPT loves using those little dashes that are out there. If you don't want it to use dashes, you can go into these custom instructions and tell it, I want you to do this, and I don't want you to do that. So if there are behaviors that you want it to change or add, this is one of the ways that you can do it. I've met a lot of HR people during my job search, a lot of people on the market these days from that area. But all of us are kind of in HR at some point as managers, right? We're hiring or firing people, we're onboarding people into teams. And so a couple of ideas that you might think about from an HR perspective. First of all, if you're going into an interview yourself, you can have a voice interview with ChatGPT. So you could give it a job description, you attach that job description as a file, and then you turn on advanced voice, which is in your search bar on the right-hand side, this little button that looks like a voice icon, and you're gonna click that and just say, I am interviewing for the role of Vice President of Marketing with JCPenney's, please conduct an interview. And you can have a voice interview back and forth with that. You could compare multiple candidates against a job description. And if you ever want to do something that's a little scary, is go on LinkedIn and find your competition and download their LinkedIn profile and compare it against yours with the job description. And it will maybe give you some great information, but also might find some holes of what some other folks have, which you don't have as well. You can generate interview questions, whether they're for jobs that you're interviewing for, or if you're conducting an interview yourself, you can have it generate those questions for you. You can also use it for onboarding talent into new roles, including yourself. So you all are gonna land, you all are gonna go into a new job, right? You're all gonna ask that question, what does success look like in the first 90 days? And hopefully they're gonna give you that answer. But then the goal is, how do we get there? So I've got an onboarding prompt for you. And in this case, the example that I'm going to give it is the book, The First 90 Days. Assist me in creating an onboarding plan for the first 90 business days in my new role. And I'm going to give it the title. I'm going to give it key details of my roles and responsibilities. The plan should be based on the principles and concepts from the book, The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins, with particular focus on the onboarding checklist, including business orientation, stakeholder connection, expectation alignment, and cultural adaptation. Here's the takeaway from this slide, folks. It's that I use the first 90 days in this, But ChatGPT and these models have been trained on a whole corpus of other business knowledge that's out there, not just words, but on complete texts. So if there is a specific business book or business practice or principle or theory that you want to integrate into your prompt, likely that ChatGPT or these tools are going to be able to find that business principle and include that thinking in how it's answering your prompt. So before we get to this closing section, I just want to remind everyone who may have to leave a little bit earlier, at the end of the presentation, I'm going to be giving you a QR code, which you're going to take your phone out. You're going to scan that QR code. That's going to take you to a survey. It's got 4 questions that will take you 15 seconds to answer those 4 questions. And at the end of that survey, click that link, because that link is going to take you to where all of the prompts are that I showed today, and a whole lot more, 14 different pages of prompts that are all for job search. If you have to leave early today, the video is going to be uploaded on the Frisco Connect website. Just go to the end of the video and you'll find the QR code there, and you can scan it and go get the prompts from there. So we are now going to get into a section I've never actually talked about in one of these groups before. It's because it's a relatively new feature that just came to ChatGPT in September of this year. It's the projects feature. You might not have even heard about it or noticed it, but it looks like a little folder on that left sidebar that you have. Whether you're a paid user, whether you're a free user, you all have this now. And it looks like a file folder because on a very high level, it allows you to organize all of your chats and prompts just like you would organize things in a file folder. But in addition to that, there is a lot more that you can do. You can actually upload specific files that you wanted to utilize only in that project. You can also set custom system instructions to tell the model that when I'm utilizing this project, this is the way I want you to behave. And so what we're going to do now for the next 5 or 6 minutes is I'm going to show you how to set up a project. And then I'm going to give you 3 scenarios of how you might be able to utilize this in both your job search and your communication workflow. So if you're looking at the screen here, this is where you're going to want to go. I've got kind of a little video that's going here. We're going to go over to the left sidebar, and you're going to click New Project. And it's going to open this window here. And the first thing we're going to do is go up to this little gearbox. And we need to select whether we want to allow the memory to go across all of ChatGPT chats, or if we only want it to be for this project. The next thing we're going to need to do is go up and pick a name. And you can pick any name you want. You can add a color to the folder. You can add an icon to the folder. And if you get lazy, you can just pick one of these little defaults. And so let's create a writing folder. And we're going to click Create Project. And so now we've got a writing project. That easy. But we're going to add files in. And you click that button, and here's where I could be adding in all of those different voices that I wanted to write in. I could create that email voice. And up here, I go up and click those buttons, and here I'm going to add custom instructions. This is how I want the model to behave every time that I'm in this project. So let's take a closer look at the project now that I've actually created it. So when it's created, it's going to be over on that left-hand side, and I just go up to that folder to open it. And here you can see that I've actually got 5 different knowledge files that are associated with this project. And if I open those up, these are all those writing styles that I wanted to be able to use. So I've got Rusty's general writing style. I've got personal text or emails, if I'm writing email versus general correspondence, networking follow-up emails. If I'm a free user, I can upload up to 5 different files. If I'm a paid user, which I am, I can put 25 different files in here. And then here's how I can use it. I can add these custom instructions. So begin by asking, what writing style would you like to utilize? And then display a numbered list that corresponds to the project files that are attached. And so now when I go to this project, it begins by saying, do you want to write like Rusty? Do you want to write like Matthew McConaughey? Do you want to write like Kim Kardashian? Who do you want to write like? And I just say, write like Kim. And now I can use that project file, and when I'm in that project, that's exactly what it will do. So let's imagine some other things that we could do with projects. How about if we create a job description analyzer where we can centralize a lot of our job search information? For instance, I could upload my master resume. I've got a master resume that's about 20 pages long. It's got everything that I ever did back to my paper route when I was 12 years old. So I can put that here. I can also put my LinkedIn profile here. And so now when I have a job description that's in here, I can get it to set up a comparison and go through all of those steps that I walked you through of, here's my resume, here's the job description, and it can start to automate all of those optimization things that I was telling you. I could put my Clifton strengths in this folder. So if I wanted to find out what are the Clifton strengths that might be most important in my role, and maybe how can I work those into a conversation during my interview, you upload the Clifton strengths file. Also, my star stories. Gosh, I create star stories every time I'm interviewing for a role. Well, if you've got your master star story list, you can attach all of those star stories now. And so when you drop that job description in and you say, I'm getting ready to interview, what are the star stories that I can pull from in my past for this? So it becomes this central repository for you to keep all of your documents. And then every time you have a job, you just go to that project folder. So today it's the JCPenney's prompt. Tomorrow it's the HP Hewlett-Packard prompt that's out there. And they're all contained in there. They're all using the same reference knowledge documents for you. So I've created a whole instruction prompt. Again, this is going to be on that template at the end, but it's kind of guiding you through the process. You can change it and customize it to get it to do anything that you want in your job search routine. Here's another idea. How do you help your network? You're meeting a lot of people. I just met a guy named Troy. He's a marketer who's here today. And I get a lot of marketing resumes that come my way, or marketing job descriptions that come my way that don't fit me, but maybe they fit somebody else out. So here's what you can do with projects. You can save your core network's LinkedIn profiles in here. So again, it's going to be 5 if you're on the free version, but for me, it's 25 people. I can put 25 LinkedIn profiles. And so now what I can do is if I get an email for a position that's chief of staff, I can just go in and say, who in my network might this help? And it will search and go through all of those files, and it will do a critical review, and it will tell me, it's a good fit or not such a good fit. And then it will automatically craft a little message for me to send to that person. Hey, Troy, I found this job description, and it really fits with your skills in this area. And boom, you can send it off. And you've helped somebody, you've automated your job search, and automated their job search a little bit. The next feature I want to talk about is something called tasks. Now, caveat, tasks are only available for paid users, but they allow you to assign and track and schedule recurring prompts for you in ChatGPT. So for instance, I have a task that is set up at 7 o'clock every morning. I've attached my resume and I say, go out and find marketing positions that are in X geography that are aligned with my resume, that are new in the system, that haven't been out there for 6 months, and that my criteria is, I think, 21 days, and then prioritize them in alignment with my resume. And so I sit down on my computer 8 o'clock in the morning, and there are these new resumes that I can utilize. But here's the cool thing is I can do the same thing for people in my network. So I can set these searches up for maybe someone who's in partner marketing or a creative director or chief of staff. And so I can have these searches that are going to be able to help my network. And so when I get these things, then it only takes me 5 minutes to help someone else, because I can then go back to that project folder and say, here are 3 people that I want to help. I've got 3 creative directors that are in there. Would this work for any of them? And boom, and it's going to give me that evaluation. It's going to give me that email that I can send off. And it took me 5 minutes to do. So tasks, whether it's doing it for your job search, or maybe there's trends that you want to track, or something that's evolving on the internet, the latest information that you want to find, you can set these tasks to do that for you. So here's an example of that prompt. Again, you'll see this a little bit later. So just in terms of once you've created a task, where you find it, because it's not in the sidebar. They're not over there like the projects. And so what you're going to do is go down to your settings, and you're going to go to your notifications. You're going to click those notifications, and you will see one that says both responses and the tasks area. And if you click the tasks, it's going to show you, here are all the different tasks that I have set up to run. You can set them up to run every hour, every day, every week, once a month, whatever frequency you want them to. Now, how do you do that? I don't think I actually explained it. Look at the part in green. You want to just use this language that says every morning at X time, or every Friday at X time, or on the 31st of the month, or whatever it might be. You start your prompt with, this is the timing that I want you to do it. Now, I have to tell you that tasks are a little bit temperamental. Sometimes you put this in and you think you're good, and then nothing happens. So you might occasionally need to go back and say, hey, you didn't set this up as a task like I asked you to, and it will think through it and it will eventually do it. But that's how you do it. You can pause a task if you want to stop it for a while. You can completely delete it. You can go in and change the instructions if it's not giving you good results. You can do that. Now, one thing that I've discovered with the job search prompt is that it's putting your information into what we call persistent memory, where the model is trying to remember all of the information that you've given it over a series of days. And what is being reported back to me and what I've experienced is maybe after 2 months, it's getting a little bit stale. And all of a sudden you come in and at 9 o'clock, there's no new resumes. It's not finding anything new. And the simple fix is just recopy the prompt, recreate a new task with the exact same information, and delete the old one, and it seems to refresh the system. So I did a big posting on this. I think it was in June of this year. If you want to walk through and see the video that I created, it'll be in my LinkedIn posts. Let's see. What else? Apps. Brand new feature, just came out last month. I'm going to play the video here so you can watch this while I'm talking. So essentially, Apps now is allowing ChatGPT to communicate with outside websites and applications. So think Booking.com, think Expedia, think Zillow. Imagine your ability to be able to interact with your Zillow account and check home prices that are in your area directly from ChatGPT. There is a Figma connection in there for people that are in design and in program management, that if you have a Figma account, you can connect the two of them, set up flow charts, mermaid charts in ChatGPT, and it creates them in your Figma account over there. Canva, does anyone use Canva in here, right? Canva? You can now link Canva to ChatGPT. So let's say you're looking to create a piece of content. You can outline that content in ChatGPT and now say, please create a full deck for me in Canva, and it will link with your Canva account and create that deck for you. I think personally, you're probably going to use this more on a personal level. For instance, if you've got a Travelocity account, maybe you're going to do all your travel research in ChatGPT and book it directly through ChatGPT. As these apps grow, this is kind of where the future is going with these things, or these connections into the language models are getting broader and stronger. So these models are going to start talking externally with more systems and give you more capabilities to do that in the future. So right now, how do you use these apps? Well, in the search bar, just go in and play and type the @ symbol. And what that @ symbol will do is pull up all of the apps that are available. I don't know if it's going to work on the mobile version. On the desktop version, that's how you get into it. So I think there are 5, 6, 7 different apps right now: Booking, Canva, Coursera, Expedia, Figma. I think there'll be more in the future. 2025, the year of the agents. So if you had said the word agent to me 5 years ago, I would have thought CIA, FBI, James Bond, maybe this guy from The Matrix, right, Mr. Smith? But now I think very differently. And at the beginning of this year, I talked about how we started to get these brand new models, these reasoning models that could think about step-by-step process, what they needed to do. So the industry predictions this year were that we were going to start to shift beyond large language models into a more agentic world. And I had to go and kind of look like, what's the etymology of agent, or specifically agency, and what makes it different? And agency is really the ability for the tool to be able to take action on its own. If you think about ChatGPT right now, it's very passive. It requires humans to do something. You have to put the prompt in, you get the information out, then you have to put another prompt in. But agents have that ability to do things on their own. Now, we've actually all been working with agents for a little while, and we didn't know it. Maybe they're a little bit more basic. Things like an out-of-office email, right? That's a basic reflex agent. That's you set a control and then you walk away, and if the model gets a new email, it sends out the response that Ron Layton is out of the office, right? And it just does the same thing each time. But now we've got these new reasoning models, and so what we can start to do is have things that are more goal-based, where we just give the model a goal, and it uses its reasoning capabilities to figure out what to do. So I want to talk about ChatGPT's agent. This was a tool that they introduced for paid users again, that came out in July of this year. And this is essentially a goal-based agent that combines 3 different tools that ChatGPT had. It combines one of these new reasoning models that can think step by step. It combines another tool called Operator that could search the internet and operate a web browser just like you and I would, to click through different screens, and a tool called Data Analyst, so that it could do Python and write Python code and math. So it brought this holy trinity, so to speak, together in one tool. And so what it does is you can give it a goal. For instance, I want you to go out and research a slice of pizza in McKinney, Texas, for all restaurants between this geography. And it will go out and it will search the internet much like you and I would. You will see a browser that opens up. In fact, let's watch a video here. So it's opening a browser. This is not actually on your computer. This is in a sandbox. And it's able to click through and do things like run code, do bookings for you. If you had access to a website that had a firewall on it, once you get it past the firewall, it could go in and do the research for you. It can create a PowerPoint presentation for you. So it is what we call a goal-based agent. You give it the goal, it figures out what to do. Now, how do you use it? First of all, it's only available in the paid versions. Similar to deep research, you're only going to get 25 of these ChatGPT agent uses per month. And so similarly, what I do is write very good prompts using ChatGPT for the agent. I figure it out in ChatGPT, what do I want it to do beforehand, and then I give that to the agent. I don't think it's necessarily better or worse than the deep research agent. In fact, I find myself using deep research probably 80 or 90% of the time. But if I have something that's web-based, I need it to get into a specific website and take specific action, that's when I will use the ChatGPT agent. So a few things that make agents a little bit differently. First of all, they've got that agency, that autonomy. They normally are working towards goal-based behavior, and they can also understand the environment and they can interact with the environment that they're in. Think about like your robot vacuum cleaner at home, right? That can kind of move around and it senses where it's cleaned, it knows where the walls are, and it's able to learn as it encounters obstacles along the way. It's able to optimize its workflow as well. The better ones are able to actually learn from the process, learn from their mistakes at the end of the day. And where we're evolving is probably a place where you can have different agents that do different tasks. So I work with a tool called N8N that allows me to connect ChatGPT with all of these different tools that are out there. And so I can create these workflows where I have a sort of a manager agent that figures out, hey, what do I want to do with this project? What are the actions that I need to take? And then that agent sends information to these worker agents that are out there. And I think it won't be long in the future before my agent is talking with Ron's agent or is talking with Foster's agent down the road to do things for us, to schedule meetings and different types of tasks that we haven't even thought of. So, folks, I know we're going to have to wind things down here. I want to make sure you all have time to get the templates. So again, as a reminder, this is going to take you to a link for a 4-question survey that helps me out to make this course better for the future. And once you complete those 4, you'll see a link to my download page. And on that download page, you'll see the prompt downloads, and you'll get a PDF from there. There are also a whole slew of other tools, custom ChatGPT tools that I've created that are free for you to use, salary analyzers, things like that, that you are welcome to. So while I'm gonna leave this up, while you're all getting that information, does anyone have any questions that I didn't answer either on break or? Yes, sir.
You mentioned you use N8N. I think that my understanding ChatGPT was coming out with another. Oh.
So ChatGPT 3 weeks ago introduced Agent Builder,
Yeah.
which is, I would say, a workflow-oriented tool, very much like N8N is. It remains primarily a passive tool, so it requires a chat input for the most part. So it's built to be a chat builder versus sort of a more multi-purpose agent builder that's out there. So I did a whole article about that maybe 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn, and you can take a look at the comparison of what they're good for. I think Agent Builder is a fantastic way for new people who know a little bit about ChatGPT and want to learn a little bit about workflows. I think it's a great tool to get people started. It's not as robust as N8N is.
Would you use N8N for a job search?
I would use it for certain aspects. Yeah. So I've got it set up, for instance, to actually talk to my ChatGPT. So I was frustrated that I was doing all the stuff in ChatGPT and then had to manually do things on the outside. And so I've built connections between ChatGPT and that. So I can do all of these activities and then move them over into whatever I want to store it in Google Drive or Google Sheets or whatever, all through N8N workflows.
We're here.
Yes, any other questions?
Right here.
Yes.
Hey, Rusty. Question for you. On the task that you had for for finding jobs that were relevant, I noticed that you did not have any particular job boards, websites for the task to go to. Is that something you need to do on the back end? Or?
Great question. Great question. So I have one task that's set up to go out very broadly. And I just used my resume, and the task is really to find things that are broadly focused on my resume. I also set up a task where I said, I want you to go to these specific boutique websites every day, X, Y, and Z. And I maybe gave it 10 different websites of where I wanted to visit it. So when you start getting results back from a task, one of the great questions is, where were you searching and pulling this information from? And in some cases, it goes out very broadly and searches 10 or 15 different sites. In some cases, it may default to like 2 or 3. And what you can then ask it to do is expand its search beyond the current ones that it's looking at. So great question. Other questions? Yes, sir.
You talked about using ChatGPT to compare resume and job description. You also talked about using JobScan.
Yeah.
How do you see those two? Because I've been using ChatGPT, comparing the two for quite a while. How do you see the two integrating? Do you see JobScan as an important additional tool? Just talk about that a little bit.
I do. I think, one of the challenges completely being reliant on ChatGPT is when you talk about ATS systems and being ATS optimized, I think the question is, which ATS system? There are many that are out there. And I think JobScan is a scalpel, more sort of specialized and focused on that aspect. And so I'm not sure ChatGPT yet replaces JobScan as a tool. I would use them in conjunction, though. So the whole part of where you have to rewrite to get things to work better in JobScan, that's where ChatGPT can, you find out what's wrong in JobScan, what your score is, and then you go back and you have ChatGPT tweak it, optimize it, and then go back and retest.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Tokens, do they renew?
Tokens are just, every time I take a bite, it's 256,000 tokens max. The next time I go to take another bite, write my next prompt, it's 256,000 tokens. So they're not anything that you spend, it's just an amount that ChatGPT can process at one time. Clear? Okay. Anything else? Oh,
Foster?
Mr. Foster, oh my gosh.
Foster has a question.
I hope you have 3 hours, folks.
No, we only have 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes. You guys knew I couldn't sit back here. Stay quiet. So, guys, with JobScan, be careful because a lot of it focuses on keywords. Now, I'm a recruiter. I'm not going to tell you how long I've been recruiting. But when you got keywords, the context of those keywords is very important. How you use those things that you are focusing on is very important. We recruiters, we hiring managers are looking at that to determine, well, you can put words all over the thing, but it doesn't tell me how you used it. If you're going to be on my team, you need to use it in a certain way. So I just want us to be careful about JobScan. I've got nothing against it. It's great for keywords, but the context of what we're doing is what's very important. Okay, I'm going to shut up. Can y'all believe it?
Short period of time. Wow.
Thank you, Foster. Anything? Oh, got a couple more down here.
Can you compare like the output between the different types of AI for these things?
Yeah.
Which one is better?
Yeah, I have. In fact, in the early days, I used to cover or try to cover all of the models and all of the updates that were happening, that were out there. They change a lot, right? Because they're updating the models constantly, and that's one of the challenges. Is ChatGPT might come up with an upgrade week 1, and then 2 weeks later, Anthropic's got a new version that's out there, or Gemini's got a new version that's out there. So there is an arms race that's going on right now. I think by the numbers, ChatGPT's kind of winning, but there are people that just have different preferences out there. A lot of people used to like the way that Claude wrote. They thought it was better for writing. It sounded a lot more natural. And then ChatGPT came out with some of their upgrades, and suddenly their writing got a lot better as well. So it's a little personal preference. Anything else? Token? So just to go back to what tokens are. So tokens think of them as the amount of information that the model can process on the input and output at one time, right? So if you write one prompt, help me research trends in the beauty industry, right? That the amount of information, the files that you attach, the length of your prompt, that is the input side, and then the amount that you get back out is the output side. So those two things put together, right now for ChatGPT, 256,000 tokens, so well over 150, 180,000 words that you can put in and get back out at the same time.
Per transaction.
Per transaction, and then if you continue with your prompt, you're back to 256,000 again.
Right.
Yep.
Very good.
Yep, got a couple more over here.
Do the Foster run.
With all of the rapidly changing abilities of AI, how are we as employees supposed to keep pace with that and remain current?
Tough question.
Without spending hours and hours and hours.
For 1995, I've got a great course for you.
I know you said it at the very beginning, but she mentioned the word employees. I should be guided by her company.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have an answer for you, right? But and it's almost a full-time job for me just to keep up with all the stuff that's happening with the technologies. I actually can't imagine if I didn't have a job where I would be in terms of my understanding with AI. So you guys, in a way, have a little bit of a blessing. You've got this period right now that you're going through where you have a gift that other people don't have, and that is time for you to be able to learn and do some of this upskilling. I don't have the answer to your question. What I can say is that it's a recurring theme that's happening in the workplace right now. There's a lot of pain points with employees who don't feel like they're getting the right upskilling, the right tools, the right understanding of policy, when they're able to use it, when they're not able to use it, how they need to identify AI in their work, et cetera. So it's hopefully something that companies are thinking about and starting to put in place in terms of policy. Mia.
Hey, thank you for a very insightful presentation, Rusty. So my question was a little bit related to what was just asked a minute ago. I was thinking about privacy. A lot of people are concerned about the information that goes in there and that everyone can then pull it. You talked about that temporary option. You talked about a few things on that. But what are your thoughts in terms of like people sometimes don't want to upload a resume because you'll have like the information, phone, email that. But that's already in LinkedIn. So, I mean, generally speaking, what are your thoughts about privacy? As a job seeker, not necessarily company policy, if you and when you get hired.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, one of the things I recommend is when you start working with a platform, whether it's ChatGPT or Anthropic or Gemini, you go read the privacy policy, and you do that once a quarter so that you understand. Or what you can also do is get the policy from last quarter and get the one from this quarter and compare them to understand what's changed. But important to know, their big picture, they're all kind of operating the same in terms of data right now. They are telling you that they are not really sharing it outside. They're not using it for advertising like the way Google normally does with your data. They're not using that data to kind of resell the information that's out there. Having said that, I still sort of urge caution with thinking about what would I put here versus what would I put in other places on the internet. You talked about your resume. Unfortunately, your resume is probably out there on lots of different websites, and AI is probably scanning and scraping all that information already. But when you start to get into more sensitive information, if you've got financial information, tax information, Social Security information, you wanted to analyze your taxes or something like that, think very carefully about it. Remove any sensitive data, Social Security numbers, just like you might if you were communicating that in an email system. It's kind of a personal choice right now, but it is a risk.
You said you use your voice to talk to ChatGPT for better communication, interaction, what have you. There's lots of scams going around that are using AI-generated voices of other people. How can we ensure that we're not going to feed that beast in terms of like feeding scams, giving our voice away, and help us understand that more.
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, the interface, if you're using the ChatGPT interface, which is the little microphone in your search bar, what that is doing, it's not actually recording your voice, but it's using a voice-to-text translator to turn that in. So your voice is never being taken, stored in the model somewhere for someone to be able to access. The only thing the model is maybe getting is the text script right there. Having said that, there are a lot of other tools that are out there, including tools created by OpenAI. So OpenAI launched Sora 2, which is their image generator about 4 weeks ago. You can now get it on your phone. And when you open up Sora 2, it's an app. The first thing it will ask you to do is it wants to get photos of your face. It will ask you to turn your head this way, turn your head this way, and it will ask you to say four numbers, not even words. It asks you 4 numbers. And from that, it creates an avatar of you, of your voice and of your look. And they're pretty darn good. So, those are the places that I think you want to be careful because they do give you the ability to share them with the public. If you go on Sora 2, you can find these avatars that people like Mark Cuban are uploading that allow people around the world to do whatever with Mark Cuban's face. Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, did the same thing as well. So they've basically put it out in the public domain, their face and their voice. And so you want to make sure if you're interacting with any of these apps that you know what is happening with that data.
Okay, last question.
Last question.
My question's around LinkedIn. They now have a security feature where you can either give it permission to, I think they have they're developing an AI feature basically to go in there and take your information and do analysis on your information, and they give you an option to either select or deselect that security feature to give it permission. What are your thoughts on that?
And I'm sorry, you're talking about
LinkedIn, it has an artificial AI capability where they're going in there and basically analyzing any information you put in there.
Yeah, I've seen actually a lot on Facebook the last couple of days. People have been putting out these warnings about, hey, Microsoft owns LinkedIn, which they do, and they're getting ready to scrape all your information that way. I don't know enough about what LinkedIn's doing to really answer and give you a good question or give you a good response to what's going on with that. But you do have options within ChatGPT that we're talking about today in terms of whether you're sharing the information back to the model for it to improve. Just to let everyone know what happens when you interact with ChatGPT is it is depersonalizing the data that it is sending to the model for any training. First of all, you can turn off the training. So you go into your personalization settings and your security and data settings, and you turn off share with the model. And that means that it's not going to use any of your information to train the model for the future. Mine is turned to off, even as much as I evangelize about ChatGPT. So you can do that today, just turn that off and know that the model is not going to be using it for training. When it does send information in, it depersonalizes it. And the way that I like to explain that is, imagine you're reading War and Peace, and you finish the book and you close the book up and you put it on your bedside table, and someone says, what were the first 3 sentences of chapter 2? ChatGPT is not going to remember that. It's not remembering those tiny little, words. What it is doing is extrapolating the gestalt, the big ideas, the big things that are happening in your prompt, and that's what it's keeping. That's what it's training on. It's not training on, see Dick run or see Jane play or whatever it might be. It's not remembering word by word text that's out there. Okay, I know we got to wrap it up. Guys, thank you so much. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, but I would ask, please include just a quick introduction, because I get so many spam things these days. So just let me know where we met.
Oh, yeah, always use